coming for this event today. My name is Andrei Kunov, and I'm the president of Silicon Valley Innovation Center. Our company works with a lot of overseas clients to bring them over here, and we organize executive education programs for them, mostly on the issues of innovation and emerging trends and new technologies, disruptive technologies. So we bring groups of executives to Silicon Valley to basically introduce them to the new technologies. That's what we do. I don't want to spend much of your time describing what we do. I have some of my cards over here, so if you're interested to learn more on what we do, we will be happy to talk to you. We have our partners today in organizing this event. Vasil, please come and from Startup Socials, and you can say a few words about your company. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrei. Thank you so much. Round of applause for Andrei and Silicon Valley Innovation Center. I'm Vasil. I work with Startup Socials. We are a global community of entrepreneurs passionate about connecting and empowering people in the startup ecosystem. We organize educational and networking events with a goal to empower entrepreneurs by identifying goals and helping them achieve the goals. And one of the definitions of events that I actually borrowed from Brian is the events are communities. So we like to think of our company as more of a community rather than events-driven company. Which is a perfect segue into Brian's introduction, who is the star of our show. But before I actually do that, just a quick shout out to Software Catalyst and Perkins Coie, our corporate partners that help run those members-only events for you guys. And I would like to give a stage first to Natasha Thompson, a friend of mine, who is also CEO and founder of Marketing Accelerator. She's also recently was awarded as one of the 25 women who rocked social media. Is it correct? So she likes rock and roll, and she'll be a moderator today. She will be the one introducing Brian.
I'm really excited to be here. Obviously, it's great to be associated with Brian, you know. And I don't think he really needs an introduction, but I want to say anyhow that obviously he's written a lot of fabulous books. And I had friends on Twitter when they saw that I'm coming here. They made me swear that I have Brian sign a book and bring it to them because they're such big fans. So don't leave before that happens. So let me get started just by saying that, as Brian wanted me to say, he has actually, which I'm amazed by, launched and marketed over 1,000 startups. Pretty amazing. And I think many of you might know him from the past when he worked at Altimeter. I know when I worked at SAP, that's how I got to know him, and he's just a really nice person and one of the most knowledgeable social media people in the world, I would say. So Brian, if you don't mind taking the stage.
Oh.
Hello. So
Hello.
nice to be here with you. So I want to start off by saying Brian already knows everything he knows, so do I. So we want to answer your questions. And I have some canned questions here for Brian, which I know he's happy to answer. But if you have other questions, we talked about this, we would much rather make sure you get a word in. So just raise your hand and we'll make that happen. But I wanted to get started by, because that's always a question that I have when I hear this future of business, future of work. Is this all the same thing? I mean, it seems to me every company I work with now, you know, Polycom, SAP, they all have a project for the future of work and Internet of Things, and then you wonder, what does that actually mean? Is this just like buzz, and is the future of business the same thing? Enlighten us, Brian.
Okay. Yes. Well, it's hard to talk about the future of anything when we get consumed, let's just say, by anything, right? And so in the last week, we were consumed by whether or not it was a white and gold dress or a blue and black dress. So when we really talk about the future of anything, what we're really looking at is what's different about today, and how is it different than yesterday? Because before we can talk about the future, We have to talk about how things today aren't what they're supposed to be, nor are they where they're supposed to be. And I work with a lot of these companies, the ones defining the future of. At some point in the last 10 years, I also had to become a digital anthropologist, right? So as a digital analyst, I used to study, or I still study, technology's impact on business. Here in Silicon Valley, that's almost ridiculous. You can't keep up with all of the technology because it's just something new every day, and you never know which is going to be the biggest hit. And suddenly it is, and now you have to have an understanding. What's slower is the impact on you and me, right? How do we start to change? How our standards start to change? I'll give you an example. I spent the last several weeks talking to the press about a company called Shuttle. How many of you have heard a company called Shuttle? Are you a mom? Wow, that's funny. No one knows Shuttle unless they're a mom or a dad. It is a competitor to Uber to shuttle your kids places instead of using Uber, because if you Uber your kids to a party or to a school or whatever, you have that stigma. Like, oh, that Uber driver is going to beat your children, because that's what all of the Uber drivers do, right? And if I explain to you the reasons why Shuttle makes sense and why parents use them and why they had to, because there was a stigma associated with Uber in their society and their social life and how their peers judge them, it starts to make sense. But I couldn't get there if I wasn't an anthropologist. And so I guess this is a long way of answering your question to say the future of work means nothing if you can't recognize why work doesn't work today. So why doesn't it work today? It has very little to do with technology. Work doesn't work because your managers suck. They're rooted in old. They reward you based on stuff that they were rewarded against, which doesn't match how you want to be rewarded. They use technology that you never use. You use something outside of work that's different and better and more efficient. And that's how you communicate with your friends, but that's not how you go to work. So the point is that once you start to psychoanalyze that, then you can talk about the future work. Because now you broke it down to where it needs to be, which is oftentimes a clean slate, which is why this is Silicon Valley and why it matters, because then you get to reinvent and build in ways that matter to the people that you're working with. If you try to make it work for you as it exists today, then all you're doing is taking old stuff, trying to dress it up in new ways. And that doesn't help and that doesn't work. And that's why you see a lot of so-called innovation here in Silicon Valley. You know you're not talking to an innovative company, and I'm sorry if I offend any of you. You can beat me up later in the back. If you start your company pitch with "we're the Airbnb of" or the Uber of, what we really need to do is start solving for problems or opportunities or issues or things that put words in people's mouth because they never were able to express that. None of this matters. It's all buzzy. The future of work, the future of business. The only reason I called it the future of business is because if I could borrow that book really quick, it'd be super clever, and I'll back there. Is there on the cover, it says WTF. And the only way to get to that was, what's the future? So that's why I talk about it that way, because I had a hidden agenda. But most of us, when we talk about the future, we have no idea what we're talking about, unless you really break it down to the problems or the opportunities that happen as a result. And then that's the room for innovation, right? Because if you define what innovation is, it's to not just iterate, right? Because that's iteration. It's to start to change how people do things, right? And if you disrupt how people do things, like, so for example, some of us used to like taking cabs because it's all we had. Now we will never do it again, so we use Ubers. That disrupted my behavior, and it changed my perception of getting into a stranger's car. Now it's great. Now I can never go back. So the point is that we have to really think about, what are you trying to solve for? And then that's what the future of anything is. If the future of work just means that you have collaboration software, don't make me work with people that I don't want to work with. Make me work with people that share like-minded opportunities, and that's a human thing. That's not a technology thing. So I spend all of my time understanding or trying to figure out what makes us not happy or not capable of doing the things that we really want to accomplish, and how do you pave the way for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So talking about Uber and customer experience, and I have to say I don't use Uber because I think that CEO is totally out of line. But anyhow, that's for me. Customer experience is somebody I can respect, and you can't. Like that GoDaddy guy used to be. Um, but customer experience is also a little bit the new buzzword, right? When we were at the Social Shakeup last year, there were a bunch of social media people on stage who said, "Oh, I'm not a social media marketing VP anymore. I'm now a customer experience manager." And it makes a lot of sense, but I know that's a big thing in your book, and I don't think anybody doesn't agree, but tell me how that comes along and what does that really mean?
Let's talk about Uber.
The guy who bullies journalists?
That's I bring that up is because we tend to look at somebody's negative side for how it's been reported in the press, whether it's and not for really the customer experience that they're delivering, right? Raise your hand if you love taking taxis. Hate him all you want, right? I'm not sleeping with him. I'm not his best friend, but I do use his service because I look, first I would take a taxi if I could get one. But in San Francisco, you can't. I have flagged down taxis who've pulled over and I've told them where I'm going and they'll say, "I'm sorry, I'm not going that way." Which way are you going? And I will go that way because I just need to get anywhere, right? The customer experience starts with first delivering on your promise, right? Because I can't imagine what the promise of a taxi company is other than I will get you from point A to point B. Now the promise of a taxi company is I'm going to subject you to the bad day that you're going to smell every bit of my body and you're going to be introduced to worldly music and cigarettes. That's not customer experience. What customer experience is I need to get what I want, when I want it, how I want it. I want transactions to be seamless. I want it to be on demand, right? Especially in today's society. And this is why you're seeing the Uber of or the Airbnb of across the board, right? I have friends who, who are great chefs who say, "Hey, let's hang out tonight because I'm actually around. What do you want to cook?" Let's just do Fluck. Anybody use Fluck? Fluck is the Uber of food, right? So if you want the food from this restaurant, you go to this app, Fluck, and you choose the restaurant, you choose what you want for dinner, and suddenly there's a driver, it already has your credit card, your food is brought to you, it's paid for, your tips included, it's all seamless, right? People who love to cook are now using Fluck because it's more convenient, it's a better customer experience, it allows for the real thing that you're trying to do, which is socializing or what have you, for whatever the evening is going to. My point is this, that if you design for what the customer experience is, and then you use technology or you use services or you change your business models to make that matter, then you can say you're in charge of customer experience. But if you use technology as a way of channeling people or talking to people or talking at people or any other metaphor or analogy you want to throw in there, then all you are is just someone saying you're different things. And that's part of the problem. Social Shakeup, for those who don't know, is a conference that brings all of the grandmasters of social media and digital into a great conference where they can talk about all the problems that they're having. So it's like a support group, but it's also a great place where they can share their successes to inspire others. It's actually a very great conference, and I enjoy being there. And Denise and Natasha were there, and a lot of great things come out of that conference. But it's also a self-help group that doesn't necessarily want to help itself get better, and it changes itself by it changing its title. When in fact the problem is that we're all going to have the same problems. We're all going to need this conference every year because we're actually not trying to solve for what the real opportunity is. And the real opportunity is that none of us actually know what the customer experience will be because we're too caught up in the day-to-day for what the standards used to be, just like the future of work. It's just whatever was yesterday, we're just trying to iterate. We get caught up in iteration instead of innovation. And my whole life is dedicated. My friend here that I met earlier tonight, she said, "What do you do?" I said, "I don't even." What I do is figure out what people's problems are, and I get in deep to figure out what the solutions are, and then I just talk or speak or give all this content away in reports so that I can scale my answers through the words and actions of other people who are going to go fight the fight with me, right? All we're trying to do is actually stop talking about the trend of social or growth hacking or customer experience or whatever the buzzword is, and trying to solve for the opportunity. And that is what Silicon Valley, I think, is why Silicon Valley is different, is because we actually want to change things, right? And now I get this question all the time. Do I need to be in Silicon Valley?
Mhm.
Only if you want to overpay for where you live, right? I mean, that's one answer. A second answer is if you want to be surrounded by people who have created an ecosystem that's now, I don't know, 50 years old, that is all designed to help you buck the system or change the world or do something differently or have it that just allows you to get all kinds of support, whether it's money or people, to actually change things. So if you want to deliver customer experience, and you better, if you tell me it has customer experience in it, you better be able to sit in front of me, first buy me a glass of champagne, second, tell me what's wrong with your customer experience today and where the gap is between your brand and the experience people have and share. First, tell me that. And most don't even know. Oh, well, we listen to customer conversations because we have social media platforms. And you still didn't answer my question. Well, because we're mostly measuring for word of mouth and share of voice and how often our brand is mentioned and negative sentiment, positive sentiment versus our competitors. But that doesn't solve the problem. A customer experience is something that you feel, something that you undergo, right? And the ones that you really hear about, whether they're good or bad, are those that what you feel is what you tell someone or what you publish or what you share, right? These are the things that drive social media, Yelp or Opinions or Travelocity, Amazon reviews, right? And so if you really want to be successful in customer experience, what someone feels and then in turn says should never be a surprise, yet it is today. And you leave it to chance. Everybody leaves it for chance. That's why I get so worked up when people tell me they're now in charge of customer experience. It's because they're not. They have no idea what the customer versus what it could be. And so one last thing is that the future of marketing or the future of any business or the future of any brand is to design, to be able to tell me, hey, what's your brand experience? Tell me what it is. And I'm going to give you an exercise. Tonight, I want you to write down what you think the Apple experience is. And don't write down remarkable or delightful or I miss Steve Jobs. I want you to write down what you think the Apple experience is, because I bet you're not going to be able to do it.
I have one more question about customer experience.
No, I'm not done answering this. I'm kidding.
No, I have one more question. So what I always ask myself when I hear this, oh, we're now customer-centric, I'm thinking, what did we do 20 years ago? I mean, I've been in marketing all my life, and I always thought we were caring about the customer too. So, I mean, what does it really mean? You know, is it because with technology we can personalize more? And, you know, I know that you're authentic and that you care, and I do too, but if you work for large corporations, there are a lot of people who just come for a paycheck. So how does that all work together?
Gosh, you ask big questions, and then I keep going on and on. I feel bad about it. First, I love that you're using a pen and paper, because I used to try to practice penmanship to get good grades, and that shows that I'm old.
I can't always read it afterwards.
You guessed it, I'm 27, I know. But the one thing about customer experience is I have yet to meet an executive who says, hey, Brian, we think our customer sucks, and we don't want them to have a good experience. They never say that, right? But so here's some interesting stats. Some of you might have heard me say this, is that when you study customer centricity, almost 100% obviously say that it's the most important thing. But when you study the investments they make or the strategies they make in actually bringing the customer closer to the company, only 7% of companies are actually making those types of investments. 7. That's pathetic, right? That's ridiculous. You want to know how many people I've had from Comcast at my house in the last 48 hours? And I had to drop the card, you know. And only then did I really start. And by the way, just to try to solve the problem, I have clocked 8 hours on the phone in the last 24 hours trying to get the problem solved. 8 hours. That's a whole business day. Now, I'm good at multitasking, otherwise that would have been a waste. However, if I hadn't dropped the card, I wouldn't have gotten the problem solved. When I dropped the card, and the card is, you know who I am? I'm Justin Bieber. Just kidding. But I did have to say, I really need your help. And I sent an email to a friend of mine in the company. I had to do that. And then suddenly, I had 4 people at my house. That's not customer centricity, nor is that scalable, right? Nor is any company that doesn't actually design for a human engagement, right? Like, raise your hand if you've called any company and you were able to get a live person easily. What company was that? No, but who? Zappos,
They're
okay.
great.
Who else? Okay, Palo Medical, okay? Palo Medical. All right. Usually it's Danica Patrick commercials, but okay. Who else? Adobe. USA. They are ranked consistently at the top customer service company. Yes. All right. Great. See, everybody patronize these businesses because they're part of the 7%. And it's small and few and far between. But what this really takes is for us to actually make the case to people who are the senior decision makers that, hey, I know you're trying to scale, or you're trying to be profitable, or you're trying to invest in technology so that we can create efficiencies and optimization and all those great buzzwords. But really, none of it matters if I ask you who is taking your calls, right? And in the end, that's what we talk about when we leave here. And it's weird that you know off the top of your head the companies that are taking your calls. It's sad that you know this and you care about the fact that people care about you. It shouldn't be that way, but it is, right? So it's in a state of technology where we use technology to distance ourselves, the only killer app, as I said in a recent book, humanity is the killer app. Reciprocity, making people feel great and using technology to sort of scale that's a whole different intention. And I guess the last point that I'll make on this is that takes intent and that takes work, right? It's very to actually do this. It takes a lot of money. And one example that I'll give you if you haven't read about it is that JetBlue is like the USAA. They're synonymous with great customer experience. Except in the last year, Wall Street successfully ousted the CEO of JetBlue, which, because it's a publicly traded company, that can happen, because JetBlue was too customer-centric. This is in a Wall Street report. He fought against baggage fees, fought against adding more rows to the plane. And Wall Street successfully ousted him because that equated to, if the math worked out, $27 million of lost revenue every year. But you can benchmark that, but where's the benchmark of customer experience, right? So the new CEO has come in now to a lot of boos and people just not happy with this, saying we're going to have to add, I can't remember the exact number, but they have to add 5 more rows in the aircraft, right? Which means that you have to become a contortionist. So there are yoga places all around.
I teach yoga if you need to practice.
And that they're charging for baggage fees. But he's trying to strike the balance between good customer experience and this. No, you're not. Because you're going to get paid either way. And the whole point is that shouldn't have happened. But it did. Do you want to know the best customer experience company out there today in general? And I know you guys are going to laugh, but I promise I'll explain. It's not Virgin. It's not USAA. It's not GoDaddy. It's Facebook. Facebook is a publicly traded company. and they want to see more money come out of that company. Their stock, when they went public, dipped because there was no real mobile strategy to monetize all that stuff. But Mark Zuckerberg said basically, hey, Wall Street, I'm going to do what I do really well, which is why I think you're kind of interested in this company. And so you can come along or you don't. It doesn't matter because I'm me. Elon Musk does the same thing, right? And Steve Jobs did the same thing. You know what they were passionate about? Was customer experience. And not in the buzzword way. They designed it and they built you something that was remarkable. And it was amazing, and everything about that company, whether you went to the Apple store, you went to apple.com, or you opened a box, everything reminded you of how amazing that company was. You need a genius, you need that problem solved. I've been at genius bars where I'm the most impatient person you'll ever meet, and I would have grandpas ahead of me who brought their entire iMac.
I wish I had that experience. For me, going to the Apple stores, I'd rather go to the dentist. Because those geniuses, I'm sorry, they don't know much.
My goodness. She works for Microsoft, by the way.
I'm just being honest. And I have another question in this regard, because the whole customer experience thing, doesn't it assume that you put your money where your mouth is? So airlines, do you guys know Ryanair? They operate in Europe. They're the cheapest airline, and the CEO is known to be not a nice person, and he is mean to people. And if your grandmother died and you call there, they'll be like, well, it's just tough, we're not going to give you the money back. I read this in the New York Times. So he was actually thinking about charging people to use the restroom. But I guess legally, humanity wise, that's not allowed. But they do great because it's the cheapest. And people say, hey, I'm okay, this guy is terrible and the service sucks, but
about it. And he's made a successful business around it. Nobody loves it, but people fly it all the time.
But is that a good customer experience?
That's not for me to define. I don't fly it, but people do. I would take Virgin or Virgin, but at the same time, you design the customer experience for what you want as the outcome, right? So if the outcome is to please Wall Street, then you charge baggage fees and you add more rows, or you put poles in your airplanes, whatever it is. Or you want someone to feel great and talk about how that made them feel. Or you want someone you solved the problem because you recognize what the problem was before you articulate it. These types of customer experience are different, right? These are more aspirational in nature. And these types of customer experience allow any company to successfully charge anywhere between 13% and 50% more for a product than they would get normally. So the math behind it shows if you're aiming, there's stats that will make you profitable. If you're not, there's stats that show you will be profitable too, right? I hate to say this, but some of your least favorite airlines are all profitable today because it's called calculated misery. There's math behind this. They all know that you're going to pay for it. So fuck you. And at the same time, we have nothing to say about it except something like this. We're in a room. Oh, that's wrong. All of this stuff actually works out because it's all counterintuitive and it's designed to work. It doesn't not work until we as consumers start to say this is not okay, and we start to change how we vote with our dollars. This is happening. Things like social media and the democratization of the web have really started to show us that we are more in control than when we know we are. But I'm going to throw you a curveball. We talk about now that customers are in control, has given us all a voice, have things like the on-demand economy, the way that I refer to it, any app, what you want, when you want. Like there's an app to get you a tamale right now, like 15 minutes, and maybe that's good. That is creating a workforce of those who then have to cater to your instant needs, right? And so I did the math over the last week of ordering Flug, Instacart, all this stuff. And it turns out that on average, the wait time was 65 minutes, right? So it's over an hour. The average tip for that person was $10 or less. They can only handle one transaction per hour. So each one of those apps might give them $1 kickback, $2 kickback on top of the $10 tip. That's below minimum wage, right? So now all of these apps that we all love and that are worth multiple billions of dollars now are starting to edge out the middle class. How is that for customer experience? Does it come at the cost?
I agree. It's like Amazon strikes. I don't know if you guys follow. I'm obviously from Germany, but they had strikes in Yodel. Who knows Yodel? Yodel is this app, and it's bartering. So it's like eBay. You put your crap on, somebody else put their crap on. You exchange. You get points. You say, I want 100 points for my old Discman, and then somebody gets it, and you get somebody else. Awesome. I'm totally addicted. So I made a pledge and I blog on their website that for 1 year I will only buy things there apart from healthcare, and there's like a list of things like underwear. Sorry, I'm not buying that on your. You get the gist. So I am all for, and wine, of course. I'm all for the sharing economy, and you talk about shared experiences in your book. So I wanted to learn more about what you mean by that and mean to everybody here in the room. Care about that.
I don't know. You just sort of demonstrated it. Ural is part of the shared experience economy, which is different than the sharing economy. Which, though, Ural is one of those rare examples where this company in the sharing economy is actually facilitating sharing, although you're trading. So it's not really sharing. Just like getting an Uber isn't really sharing because you're essentially hiring a car to take you somewhere. And Airbnb, well, that's still hospitality because someone has to give you a place. So none of this is sharing.
Can I make one more comment here? Sorry, because I'm so passionate about Yodel. So their goal is their mission to decrease the purchasing by 25%.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I blogged about this on LinkedIn, and one guy wrote a comment. He said, no, that's just great. Now we're going to completely screw the economy. Just saying, not everybody agrees with this, but
it's true,
they do have a really good moral compass, and the CEO and the co-founder was at the youngest president of the Sierra Club in the 90s, so it's pretty cool. They really walk the talk. Sorry, just wanted to throw that in.
This is the true power of the sharing economy. It has nothing to do with sharing. It actually with this idea of what's right for the economy. Do you really need a Rolex? I mean, I have one, but the reason I ask that is because there's a true threat to Rolex. In the next 20 years, it's estimated that their numbers are going to dwindle because that was once a stat and success. And now it's turning. Now it might be, how much did you reduce your new purchases by in your lifetime? Or what was your carbon footprint reduction? Whatever it is, that this now becomes a new metric of society. There was a recent, I can't remember the school, but today it was announced that a school that's about 110 years old is closing. Because, well, first of all, things happen on the fringe, but remember, things move from left to right really fast, or left to right, your way. It was an all-women's college. So some people will say, well, you know, that's just old school. Nobody wants to do that anymore, especially at the college level. Okay, fine. Still a prestigious college. It's still shutting down, and it's because the price was expensive and enrollment was going down, right? Just like any business, supply and demand. It's also because every college is going to start going through this because people are going to start to wonder, and I'm not talking about the Stanfords of the world, but most colleges are going to have to undergo a justification process of, why should you pay $100,000 in accumulated debt that you have to carry forward in a job that's going to make you drive an Uber? Right? And so these things that are starting to happen in market shifts, right? Marriage is being delayed, house purchases are being delayed. These are having significant effects on the economy. This is a long way of saying that the customer experience that you design for isn't the customer of yesterday. It's not the standard that we grew up with. It's the standard of what we don't know. And customer experience, the Yodel for you, this is fantastic. And now that I know this about you, I would think about other ways to sort of translate how many people are like you, and how could I design customer experiences that cater to you? How could I make you buy something? Because
I was thinking what you were thinking of putting cool stuff on there so I can get it.
Well,
okay.
I plenty of cool underwear that you're more than welcome to trade. But in reality, though, the true psychology of this is the challenge it represents to first appreciate and understand and empathize with it, but also facilitate it And then also say, well, look, there are some things you're going to need to buy, but I understand why you're doing this. So now the things that you might buy are going to be held to this standard, and you're going to talk about it in the same way. But that's experience architecture. That's this idea that I know what's important to you, so I'm going to design a product or a service or a marketing campaign that's going to speak to you and through you. And so therefore, in the way that she's passionate about something, you're going to share it. It's an experience designed for you, and it becomes something that's shareable. And it's a very different strategy. And to me, this is the future. It's inevitable. It's going to weed out a lot of people. You can't just suddenly change your title to experience architect. You're going to have to really think about what matters to people and why, and at their core sense of who they are, because we live in an ecosystem, right? Nobody wants to be the next Iggy Azalea. Just for a minute, that song sort of represented who they were. But then there was Kendrick Lamar's next song, right? It wasn't like us when we were kids having posters of people on the wall, or some of us, because I'm old. But all of this idea of aspirational idols is momentary. It's down to who shares your core values, and core values are important because you're important. Because if you post a selfie, 30,000 likes on it, it reminds you of how important you are. So you do it again, and the more you do it, you're convinced that the world revolves around you, because it does. So companies like this now have to cater to this egocentricity in a way that doesn't just cater to your vanity or your narcissism, but who you are inside, because that's what's scalable.
I love how you tied it all together from the beginning. And how much time do we have left? Do we have like 15 minutes or so? Perfect.
That's Vassal's way of saying, oh, please.
Enough of you guys.
The wine is
Please,
getting
the
warm.
gentleman, if you don't mind saying your name, do we have a mic maybe that we can give to somebody in the audience? Thank you. Obviously the question.
Vassal, this one's going over here first. And then we have 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
And then...
and after that, I'll answer the questions. Everybody will leave.
Well, first of all, my name's Jonathan. I'm leader of a startup called Cognitio. We're LinkedIn. I appreciate your candor and your kind of approachability around these very touchy subjects. So I have a retort or a question for you about engagement. And it's become the new buzzword these days, even more than innovation in a sense lately. Our company is about innovation, disrupting innovation, if you will. Hate that word, disrupt. Anyway, we all talk about engagement if it's something palpable and measurable, and I think to some degree we believe it is. And yet there's the humanity aspect you keep bringing up, and certainly you seem authentic and very approachable, and I appreciate that humanity is a core value system for you. It is for our company as well, so I can relate. My question is, how much does engagement, or what we're calling engagement using social media to define interpretation of what it should be, to your point earlier, about what should engagement feel like or look like to people, how much is that actually co-opting the underlying point of making humans connect better? Because to me, going to my device while you're talking is just rude. I was taught this at Oracle. I worked 3 years at Oracle where they taught you don't ever pull your device out in front of a customer. Whether it's a laptop or a pad, it didn't matter. Because in the end, the attention that you give to each other is what matters the most. That's how we make change, is through people, and not through processes, and not through technology, as you aptly put. Understanding of this is we're living in a dichotomy right now. We're talking about engagement on one hand, and we're doing the exact opposite and demonstrating the exact opposite in social graphs. So maybe I've quintessensed something that you yourself feel, but how do we begin to peel back the onion on this one? Because this is a real problem of where we are today, and I believe this in the workplace. I work at the UC during the day, and collaboration is at an all-time low, and our CIOs desperately trying to make change happen using the inter-university, innovation ecosystem, which isn't one. Frankly, we're all stovepiped. So my whole understanding of this is it's all backwards, and we need to change this and flush the format and get to the real dialogue here. Like, let's talk about people helping other people, not helping their own metrics or their own, performance statistics for the year. And that happens in the Valley just as much as it does in Oakland.
I feel like I should just get up and applaud for you. So, has anybody in this room, has anybody read any books I've written? Some of you? Okay. Hey, Valeria. I wrote a book called Engage, and it dealt with this. And the entire point of the book was please stop talking about vanity metrics, because that's not what engagement is. And I wrote that book in 2007, and I still have to talk about this today. So much so that I thought about rewriting that book to remind people of how engagement is something that happens. It is measured by what happens next. And I wrote a research report about this, free for anybody who wants to get it. It's called, just Google my name and digital influence. And it shows what happens when you design for what happens next. So don't take the view, don't take the comment, don't take the like, don't take the impression. Design for what happens next. What happens next is an experience, by the way. So, in fact, Denise was there when I introduced this, and so were you, Natasha, about it's called the embrace. So I started not talking about engagement because it was such a buzzword that it lost its meaning. So I talked about the idea of the embrace. I have your attention, and you have my attention. I have you for a moment. That's the embrace. I can measure that and say, holy shit, I had you for 6 seconds. You clicked 3.2 pages beyond that, and you led to a shopping cart abandonment. Or I can design what leads to something better, but that's intentional. I have to know the context of what brought you there and the context of what you were trying to do. Certain amount of stages, by the way. This is all scalable. I know what's going to bring you in and those types of scenarios, and I know the 6 to 8 types of people who are going to hit those scenarios. When you design for the embrace, it's an emotional connection, right? Did you know that regardless of what business you're in, you can make pacemakers. There are 6 to 9 questions that people ask all the time. They go to Google, like there's a human being behind the Google wall. Which pacemaker is best for blah, blah, blah? Which, by the way, is part of the problem because how many of you have self-diagnosed your disease? Right? I mean, we're all dying. So the point is that I understand what got you there and I understand where you're trying to go. And so then with the embrace, engagement becomes about the outcome. And that outcome becomes the metric. And there's a certain amount of outcomes that'll happen. You might not be ready to buy. You might not. Maybe all you need was validation. I don't know, whatever it is. But you design for those outcomes. And you measure this stuff. You measure engagement by the effect. Cause and effect. Or change in behavior. Right? So this is why he used the word humanities. I often say, oh, the humanities of it all. The idea is it's all about social science. Psychology, sociology, ethnography, anthropology. When you use technology in all of these ways, essentially all you're trying to do is solve for human issues and human aspirations and human outcomes. Technology just becomes a facilitator. Any other metric is a distraction. Celebrate it because it's easy to do that. I'll give you an example just real quick, and I know I'm the one who put the 5-minute deadline. I had a secret little life for several years with Ashton Kutcher where we had started a digital engagement agency to experiment with media. I still experiment with media today with a friend of mine. His name is Hugh McLeod. He's also known as at Gape and Void. He's an artist. And we try to experiment with outcomes and changes in behavior, essentially digital influence. And when I was working with Ashton, we had the opportunity to do all kinds of really, and one of which I can talk about is with the United Nations. And our assignment was to increase awareness for malaria. By the way, I'm doing one with Adrian Grenier right now for Lonely Whale, so if you can go support that Kickstarter, Lonely Whale, that would be great. But with this one in particular, we had to raise awareness for malaria because millennials and younger don't even know what that is. And most people don't even know that in Africa, where it's really, really concentrated, the only combatant to malaria is a bed net. Can you imagine? Wow. A bed net. And so our job was to raise awareness digitally around among millennials and the younger, Generation Z, the preteens. Well, our job was to get you to know about malaria. The second job was to get you to donate a bed net. It's $10, right? In the first 3 days, Ashton pulled all his celebrity buddies. I pulled all my non-celebrity buddies. And in the first few days, we had something like 265,000 tweets, all driving to this URL. We had 800 BedNet donations out of the 265,000 tweets, right? That's got to be it's worse than email, right? But the United Nations said they saw the first stat. They're like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's TV stats when you start to look at the amount of followers that everybody has. I mean, you just beat the Super Bowl. We wanted engagement. But what if engagement was measured by how many kids you saved or how many people you saved because of a BedNet? Now you just changed the game. So then you go through it as, why didn't that work? Why was that conversion ratio so bad? And you can do this in real time. So I'm the only one thinking about this. And I reverse engineered it. Do you know how difficult it is to check out a BedNet? It's I wouldn't even donate. Here's $10. You go check out. Here's $12. 25. Get me a cronut too. When you redesign it to be a one-click outcome, land on the page, donate the BedNet, then have a tweet that says, don't retweet, just donate malaria. Boom, click, bam. Donations through the roof. Retweets doubled. 2, reverse psychology. You have to design for the outcome, and then you have to make it meaningful enough for people to follow it all the way through. So engagement is user-defined, is my point.
All right, and looks like it's a perfect note to finish our conversation today. We want to make sure that we could listen to Brian the whole day, but we want to make sure that we have enough time for Brian to sign the books. Let's give a round of applause to both Natasha and Brian. Thank you so much.
And I just wanted to say, I think the main takeaway, and I love how he closed the loop. So, humanity is the killer app. That's a really good, I'm going to tweet that, hashtag that. So thank you, Brian, you're the best. And quickly, just so I can get out of your hair. For JC, can you, if I turn this, not everybody has.